Good afternoon, and welcome to Table Talk with a special guest today, Jeff Miller from Vermont Fatherhood. Here with you this afternoon, bringing a new idea, not in general, but a new idea in a new place to go in Barrie. So thanks for joining us here on 802 Scoop. Make sure you like, follow, share. Make sure you participate in the comments. We will be keeping track of those. So if you have any questions or anything that you might like to share today, please feel free to put them in the comments, and we will make sure that we get it out to you, and we'll share with you. Josh, so first, let's let you welcome and thank you for coming, and then let's let you introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about you and what Vermont Fatherhood is.
Okay. Well, my name is Josh Miller. I'm a dad. I'll start out there. I have 4 boys, ranging from 10 years old to 33 years old. So 10 years old is Henry, Calvin is 14, Oliver is 16, and my oldest guy, Jordan, 33, about to hit 34, and I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, Reagan. So that's probably one of the most important things about who I am, is being a dad. And Vermont Fatherhood, is something that started actually a few years ago. I was working with a friend of mine, Greg Stefanski, who we had talked about, the work around our own experience growing up, and dads that we had worked with, and young men that we had worked with, and just how much there's not a lot of support out there. And so a few years ago, we had started it as a state nonprofit, and back in sort of the end of 2016, and thought I was on a course to actually run that organization from that point, but I ended up being the executive director of a parent-child center called the Janet Esmond Family Room in Burlington. And so was doing that for the last few years, and just realized how much my heart and soul is, and my calling is to work with dads, support dads, and so they can be there for their families in the best way possible. And so, decided to leave that position, and just kind of always had my eyes set on Barrie to come here and get this work started. And so I'm super excited to be here. I've felt very welcomed by a lot of people here, and just super excited to get some dads in the door and start doing some work.
I think we're very lucky to have you. I think this is an amazing thing. I'm super excited for you. I think it's long overdue, and Glenn Brummert's tuned in, so I know that he has heard me say this before, and I give a lot of support to dads. I didn't have, I had a dad growing up, but a very different dad. My dad is not my biological father, but he was our dad. He stepped into the role when I was 9 years old, total boots on the ground, said, okay, I'm going to take care of this woman and her 3 children, and never look back. And so I, forever will be grateful to him. And in my mind, he is my dad. That's the way it is. There's no step about it. But I often think of what it was like for him. And so how cool is it that you're here and you can offer support, because that's just one of many family makeups. And families can exist in all different sorts of ways. And how cool is it that you can give support to any dad?
Yeah, and I think to your point of, there's, dads that people are being raised by not by their biological dad, by their grandparents. There might be an uncle involved, or, a partner it's not, by marriage or anything. And just, they're, I think, having, first of all, parenting is really hard. It's a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
And I think for dads, just, coming in, and whether they're the biological dad or not, just, how to support them, how to help them be the best dad they can be. And, some people were really fortunate, had a solid role model and dad and male in their life, and some folks didn't. And so how can we help them as they enter into fatherhood, or they have a family, and how do we, help them learn some of the things that they want to learn being a good father. So.
And you can have the greatest life and the greatest childhood and the greatest upbringing, and still when it comes to you being a dad yourself, I think that it was just like a mom. I panic. I think, am I going to do things like she did? Am I going to do them right? Am I going to do them wrong? There's some things I loved about my mom, and there's some things that I didn't love about my mom. And so how to bridge that gap, and where do you find the support? And I think that dads experience the same things. I don't think that it's always recognized that they do, or not recognized enough, but they certainly experience the same things where you think, okay, I want to be as good as my dad, or I don't want to be anything like my dad at all. And you got to find that medium. And sometimes you need help to find that, or at least help knowing that you're not the only one that feels that way.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the work that I do is just about defining and redefining fatherhood. What does it mean to be a dad, And I think there's some, things that have long lasted through time and will always last through time, which is, provider and protector. And I think redefining what those are. I think obviously, being a provider for your family is important, being a protector for your family, but, those things can take on a lot of different definitions, and it has a lot more to it. And I think the way, families are made up, it's, sometimes the dad might be staying home, and what that means to be provider and protector might be different than, if you're working, 40 hours a week. And so really giving guys the opportunity to decide what that is, and have that conversation, hold that conversation with not just, not a one-on-one, could be one-on-one, but in a group where you hear other guys talking about what does it mean to be a man, what does it mean to be a dad, and just hearing other people talk about it, because sometimes in our own minds we have a limited, like what a dad is this, and right. I think hearing different ideas, and that's how, so I wouldn't know if I'd call it my teaching, but that's the way we learn, is listening to other people, hear what they do when their kids are having a hard time, when they're having a tantrum, when they're struggling in school, when they're not making friends, when they, whatever's going on for them, that you hear what other people are doing. And I think moms do this very naturally, like, this is what we did, this is what we do. And so how can men create that space where they feel like they can say the thing, and it may not be the same as mom, but they have a space to kind of sort that out and come up with their own definition. It might be a group decision about, hey, this is what it means to be a good dad. Or you might pick and choose and glean what things are important to you as a dad.
And when I say absolutely, I don't mean that like moms know it instantly. It doesn't. The one thing that I think comes natural is the ability to kind of ask. And that is, and I think that comes from a long line of like, you are the man, you're the protector, you're supposed to be the strong one. You're not supposed to be asking somebody else. And that's not true at all. And where we'll pick up the phone and vent to our girlfriends and say, this happened today, or that happened today, or have you ever gone through this? What did you experience? What did you do? And you may cry on the phone and say something, where I don't think that men as easily would pick up the phone and call their best friend and say, hey, this is what's going on. I think they hide a little more, and that's super unfortunate, but it's kind of like, that's been a learned behavior for many, 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 many years.
Yeah. And I think that you use the word vent. Like, I think there is like, how do I sort this out? I'm stressed, not sleeping good at night. You have a a newborn baby, or whatever's going on, whatever stressors you have, finances, whatever. And you're just like, things are going on. And, I feel like when we're under stress, when we're feeling down, when things aren't going our way, sometimes we don't make the best decisions. And sometimes we're reactive. Sometimes we do things. And so the idea of, some of the work with Vermont Fatherhood is just having a space to come talk about things and sort it out. I'm not going to wave any magical wand and solve all the problems, or, it's just really being able to talk about those things. This is really difficult, and that kind of letting out the pressure is really, really important. I think that's what, again, nothing's across the board, but, I feel like moms have figured some of that out. I can call somebody up, I can ask a question, I can vent, I can cry, and I feel better. Now I can go take care of business at home, or whatever it is that I need to do. And I think that having that outlet for men will be, really important.
I agree with you 100%. I think it's super important, and I'm excited for you, and I hope that many people start to open up and look at this as it's just a tool in a toolbox. That's all it is. It's not it's not saying that you're not big and strong and you're the man of the family. It's not saying that at all.
Yeah.
It, if anything, it says it even more, that you're willing to step up, take charge, and say, okay, I need to find a way to deal with this so that I don't make poor decisions, or so that I do give myself that time and that space to like just breathe for a minute and know that no one's perfect, including the man of the house.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
no matter what your situation is.
Yeah, I think there's so much that can be, one is just like having a space to do that and figuring that out. And I think you're right. I mean, I will agree with you that I think, it shows a lot of strength to be able to ask those questions, to be curious about whether it's child development or how do I handle my kid's behavior. I'm not quite sure. And, I think that I got this mentality can work in a lot of ways. And I think it can also work against people in a lot of ways. And I think that's important to say.
Or I don't agree with my partner's decision or
different.
rules. Yeah. And so how do I approach that? How do we work on that together without me seeming like I'm a real...
Well, I think the parenting is hard. And I feel like I've been saying this like a broken record, and I think co-parenting is also really hard. And I think, how do we do that? How do we navigate that? How do we communicate with each other? How do we take a break from each other? How do we, if we disagree, how do we make decisions about our children? And that's not easy.
No. So. And like you said, relationships are hard enough as it is. They're already a full-time job, and now you've got a second full-time job at making sure that these little individuals are safe and happy and healthy, and that's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah. I think it's a lot on families to do that. And I think there's all the pressures. I mean, that, financial pressures, scheduling, timing, all the stuff. And then we carry with us a lot of stuff. We come into relationships and, it's me and my, partner, like, things are great. And then you have a baby, and then all these, like, oh my goodness, like the stuff that however I was raised and however my partner was raised, and then like, how do we do this thing together and to sort that out, and it's fine to ask questions, and it's fine not to know, and by getting those answers, I think it's it's gonna to ask those questions and feel comfortable doing that as a man, I think is really important, to say, I'm not sure. Yeah. Let me go find out. And so the thing about the internet, like, we can do that now. We can type in a question,
right? And
that's okay. That's kind of feels like that's fine. But come and ask a question about parenting, or just be able to say, I'm not doing this well, and I'm not sure what to do or how to feel about it. It's great. I love when guys come in with that.
That's awesome. Now, you've worked with many dads in the past on many different in many different ways, let's say. I know that you've been involved, or I believe that I read that you were involved with things in the prison system and helping kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah, I worked, I definitely worked I was down in Brattleboro when I first started really intentionally doing this work, down at another parent-child center called Early Education Services, and did a lot of work with probation and parole, worked with a lot of folks who had been in that system, and so I started to do some work. I was about to start to do some work in the Springfield Correctional Facility, but didn't actually manifest. But I did work up at Northwest Correctional Facility for maybe about a year and a half in my role as the dad guy. It's called the dad guy at the family room, and guys who were sort of on the cusp of maybe reentering in their communities, and so one is engaging them in the prison, just talking about what's going on. It's the same philosophy, honestly, or the same approach, which is, that your role as a dad is really important. Like, you are really important, and what you do and what you say and how you say it matters a lot.
Absolutely.
And so getting them to buy into themselves, like, I didn't know that, which is hard to believe, but it's very true. You just don't know how important that stuff is. And then, developing that relationship with those guys there, and it took a little time. I don't have that experience of being in prison. So, who's this guy? And so really talking about, again, focusing on what it means to be a dad. And then when a couple of guys who came out and tried to help them reintegrate either just into kind of the world and also into life back with their kid, and navigating some of the things around, again, the co-parenting stuff, visitation stuff, what you do and what you don't do. There's a lot of those things to kind of go over and talk about so that, they think that they, are on the, hopefully a good path. So, yeah.
And just like with anything and everything, to know that there's some sort of support system is, I mean, there's all kinds of reentry support systems. There, I mean, we could use more. There's never enough. I can think of a million things that I would, want to add to the list. But to know that, okay, here's my foundation. Here's where I can start. And when I leave, I know it's not going to immediately. Sometimes you have it in your head, I'm going to walk out the door and everything's going to be just fine. The same it was before. I'll step right back into my kids' lives and all of this stuff will just happen. And that's really not reality. It's like you say, it's work. It's stuff that you have to work towards. You have to learn and grow and do these things. And sometimes the circumstances are different. It might be from a domestic situation. It could be, there's a whole avenue of reasons that you could have been incarcerated. But there's also just as many avenues of how do you get back to your kids, maybe your family, and how do you make all of that work and grow in the right way and learn in the right ways.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having that support.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I think it's there's this. It takes a village idea of we need folks around us to help get through it, and that's in somebody. That idea concept is and practice is like across the board, and not even have to do with somebody who's coming out of prison and trying to reintegrate and kind of have new behaviors and whatnot, and it's a lot of work. So I think that when guys do that, having some community, a connection, a person. But it's not going to be, I'm not going to wave a magic wand and be the person, but hopefully we can build a community of guys, and that the community around, that touches those guys can support them and value them in their role as a dad and give them opportunities to do that. And that's hard. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of dedication from the dad, and it's not easy.
And the village.
And the village.
So, what do things look like at Vermont Fatherhood? What does a day over there look like? Are you do you do like literal classes? Are there play groups? Are there what is it that you do over there?
Well, trying to kind of early on, so it's not too busy right now, but I hope to get real busy. But right now, I've been trying to do like an easy lift thing, coffee hour in the morning, 9 to 10, just stop by and for a cup of coffee and hang out, introduce yourself, get to know me, see the space, kind of feel things out. And yeah, it's just kind of getting to know each other. I mean, a lot of this, to me, this work is really about building relationships with people and connections and building trust. And I'm not a long-time Barry person, so I think people, who's this person? And, hopefully people will stop by and get a cup of coffee and maybe we'll have some donuts out or whatever. And so that's one thing. And then play groups, doing like a Monday and Friday, 10:30 to noon, just drop in play group for kids kind of 36 months and younger. Dads can be however old. But, having just to come by and hang out and play, have a snack, have coffee ready to go, and just talk about what's going on. How's being a dad? What's going on with your baby? What's going on with your kid? What's going on with all your kids? And what's fun and what's tough? Or just meet other guys. Hopefully just connect with other guys, see what other people do. How are they navigating their 10-month-old or their 2-year-old or whatever the things are. And so that's Mondays and Fridays, 10:30 to noon. And then this last Tuesday, I just started a drop-in dads group on Tuesday evenings, 5 to 7. Just again, show up. You can call ahead if you want, and just check it out. But drop in, and the idea is getting guys together and talking about being dads and what does that mean and how are things going, what's challenging these days, how's work going, and again, building relationships with other guys, hearing what other guys have to say, what they're going through, and getting perspective on our own situations. And then so part of that is checking in. The other part is like, maybe there are themes that are coming up. Maybe people are talking about, gosh, my kid is having a real hard time in school, or whatever is going on for them. Maybe it's around eating, like, my kid won't eat anything. I can't get them anything any more than chicken nuggets, And so what are the things we can do around that we can help, build your ideas about what, those skills, what are those things to help out and try different things. So that's 5 to 7 Tuesdays, dinner's provided. So I have dinner and there is some childcare. So if somebody's got their kiddos, they're a stay-at-home dad or just they're single dad, whatever, bring the kids along. I've got some space there and to hang out and a couple people to help do some stuff with them. And so that's 5 to 7. Trying to get a storytelling time on Wednesday mornings, 9:30. I just think one of the really easy things for dads to do to connect with their kids is just reading a book, reading a story, And there's so much to say about that around building a routine, going to bed, reading a story to your kid, reading 2 stories to your kid, and just settling them down from their day. And it's a nice way to calm them down and calm yourself down, a way to be fun, a way to be silly. And I love, my favorite books to read is The Gruffalo, so it's fun to read a book that, some people... You
can be a character.
Yeah, you can be a character, you can use your voice. And there's just so many ways to connect with your kids through books and when they're little, and it's important for their learning, right? Just learning words, learning sounds, and just smiling and laughing and being silly with their dad too. But I think it's a really important piece to that of just getting story time. Maybe we'll do a couple songs as well. And at some point I'd like to get this. It's a program called 24/7 Dad. It's more of an enrolled program. And it's like a 12-week sort of parenting class. And some guys need that. So come on board and, I think I've got it scheduled for 11 to 1 on Thursdays where we'll have a curriculum that we'll use. And, we'll use the curriculum for the most part, but, as themes come up where, maybe there's a topic that's really hot for the guys to get into, maybe we'll spend another week in that topic, whether it be around, our kids' behavior, maybe it's around, their nutrition, it might be around relationships, it might be around whatever, all kinds of topics, right? So that is a program I'm trying to get going, and a lot of individual stuff. I'm just, coaching, mentoring. If a guy wants to, really one-on-one is their preferred way, to just meet one-on-one and talk about what's going on. We could do it up at the center up there, or we could go for a walk, or I love to play basketball. We could shoot hoops and talk about parenting. Sometimes
you can meet up at an open gym some
yeah.
night.
Sometimes just sitting face to face isn't that fun. So going to do something and talking about it is a great way to connect. So I think that's kind of the main stuff that I have going on right now. Maybe I'm forgetting something. But.
So, what happens in life, or what made you decide that this was important and this is something that you wanted to do? What is it that made you decide, okay, I want to start really opening up and teaching and talking to people about being a dad?
Good question. Well, I grew up without a dad. I don't know my dad. I don't know anything about him. Don't know what he looks like. So I think from an early age, just wanting a dad and knowing that was hard, not having a dad. My mom raised me with my sister. I'm from Minnesota, actually Minneapolis. And, that was difficult. And then all of a sudden I was a dad. I have a boy, but I was still seeking kind of what is it, that especially then I think, what does it mean to be a dad? I mean, that is the question. That is a great thing to talk about with guys and anybody. What does it mean to be a dad and a man? And I think those things are pretty connected. And so, I think I always had that question. What does it mean? And what kind of dad am I going to be? What kind of, and so I think that was some of probably the foundation of why led me to this work. And then I ended up working at a school called Kendall Farm in southern Vermont for at-risk boys who had struggled in mainstream school, and worked there for a number of years. And a commonality of those guys is they didn't have their dad around. I'm not saying not having their dad around led to their not doing well in school, but I think it was a big factor. And some guys did have their dad, and those guys weren't always, the most solid parents. They had their own struggles, and I think they really struggle to connect with their kids about, things that are going on with them. So I kind of part of that seeking for me was I sought out some men's groups, created some men's groups, and really seeking out that identity for myself. And then I put that together with the boys, my own experience, and just saying, I got to start a dad's group, get these guys. So down in Brattleboro, started this group called Dedicated Dads Making a Difference. And I had no idea what I was getting into. Never would say that I was a model parent by any means, but started it and realized that guys loved it. Guys, tell you, this idea that guys don't want to talk about being a dad, I tell you, they love to talk. I always got to cut them off. We got to make sure everybody gets equal time.
I agree that they love to talk. I always laugh about that.
We like to talk about lots of things. We like to talk about sports. We like to talk all that. We love to talk about lots of things. So let's put the topic in front of them as parenting. Being a dad, and so I think that that group really grew into a lot of different ways. I mean, that was probably not enough time to talk about that, but we started a prenatal workshop called Training Camp for New Dads. So guys who are expecting. Really getting them ready to be a dad and start a family and what that all means, and then did stuff with the schools and school down there, and meeting with guys individually and some home visiting. So meeting with guys sort of on their turf, just checking in, and eventually that led to me getting a job at the Family Room, working with guys around getting jobs. And other group stuff, a lot of other sort of parenting / support groups or whatever, dads groups. Just it means a lot to myself as my identity. It probably means a lot to my kids. I don't know if I'm being there as their dad. And I hear it in men. They want to be a good dad.
Yeah.
They want to be there for their kids. They want to be a good dad. And so how can I help them
and
get there?
that's what I was saying. Men want just as much as women. Women want to be good moms, and men want to be good dads. I mean, you do. But sometimes, just as much as women, though, sometimes you fumble.
Yeah.
We tend to reach out more. We'll phone a friend in a heartbeat, or, and maybe even our mom. But if you do have a dad in your life, is that somebody that you're going to call, or are you being a man, and so you're not calling to ask for that help, and because maybe you don't want to let that guard down or that toughness down. And Michael Boutin says, many men were raised with the mentality that don't ask for help. How do you break through the barrier to provide that help that is so needed in our society?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to it. I'll say this, and I'll say it over and over again, is, just connecting, building a relationship, just talking about what's going on. And I think, again, finding spaces where men can connect with each other, and once you've kind of made that connection, like maybe that does come up, like, and it doesn't have to be direct, like, oh, I need help, or I'm not doing good, I'm not doing a good enough job, but to be able to just, kind of open up the conversation around what does it mean to be a dad. And I think that, it is hard to ask for help. We have a lot of pride, and I think that's across the board.
Yeah.
Parents have a lot of pride. It's a very personal topic and area, and we want to do it. We want to do it well. So it is hard to ask for help, and so I know it's a lot to get there. But I think it's important that guys do feel like, I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure what to do, and so we talk about it. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I think through talking about it, we can figure out what's the best thing for that. What's the best strategy? What's what's comfortable to you? Where are you at with your parenting, and what you feel like you can do? And so I think building relationships with guys, like being able to connect with them, and they can trust that, trust me, and what I say to them is, in the best interest of them. Like, I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not always about, and it doesn't always need to be about that. And like you say, you're just getting together. You're just chumming around, hanging out together, building relationships of your village. You're building your village that is there. And not every time you get together, there's going to be something that's considered a problem. Because it's really not. It's just life, and it's learning how to maneuver that and be together and maybe chit chat about it, because you're all dads in the same room. You're you're not the roofer or the contractor or the engineer. You're not any of those things when you're in your space, Vermont Fatherhood. You're just a dad.
Your dad, and that's a big thing. And that's my hope, is that people do that. And for some guys, like, that groups aren't comfortable, but even still, like, we can do some. I feel like I can be pretty flexible and find ways to connect with guys, and hopefully they again feel the courage that they can ask for help, but they again saying, I'm not sure what to do. To our previous conversation of, that actually feels like you are manning up actually more, because you're trying to figure out what's the best for your kids.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, I know that me personally, if my partner came to me and said, I'm really not sure of that, I would be proud of him, and I would want to have that discussion with him, and I would want to support what he was, maybe even if we didn't agree, at least there's a conversation, and you've opened something out so that you can come to the middle somehow. And so, because let's face it, if you're not doing that with your partner, then there's a whole nother tension that can create more problems. And then you're taking that out on the kids, maybe, or maybe you're taking it out on your partner. You're just adding one, by not opening up and learning how to do that, then you're putting one more wrench in the bucket that doesn't really need to be there. And so, I don't know, I just think it's awesome that you're doing this, and I hope that you fill up so much that you need to find some other dad to help you out. That's what I hope. I really do.
I will say that's the hope. Right now it's a one-man show, but I do hope that, that there are guys who are out there who are good dads, and, maybe they don't need support, but that they could come and say, like, hey, listen, I'll show up to coffee and we'll just hang out as we meet other guys. And, that's, again, building an extension of, of what I'm doing, but in the community, that they can connect with other guys.
And to know that moms are too. I mean, none of us are perfect. And I know several moms that maybe necessarily shouldn't be moms. There are just as many in that situation. There are moms that just aren't great moms. They don't do a great job. And you just don't hear about it as much. People don't talk about it as much. The stigma isn't really there. But I feel like, if a man goofs up, it's like, oh my God, the world's crashing down. And that's just it's so unfair. And I've always said that. I kind of feel like the system is a little bit broken in that way. And maybe that's where we're old fashioned. Like I said, I think it's been around for years, where years ago, the society was built so that men went to work. They were the provider. They were this, they were that. The women stayed home, and they cooked and they cleaned and they cared for the kids. We kind of had different jobs then, and that has all changed. That we're partners in this all. And so how do you make all of that work and break that mentality that was for forever? And that's tough.
Well, I think that's the piece about, you were kind of saying around, can you just being able to talk with your partner about the stuff, whatever it is, whether it's traditional mother's roles, traditional father's roles, and there's just a lot to be done. How can we get it done, whether it's washing the dishes, doing the laundry, mowing the lawn, all the stuff that we have to do? Like, how do we figure this out? Who's picking up who? And that maybe mom's working, more than the dad or whatever, and so dad's picking up more of those, maybe, I don't know, traditional or, again, mom's roles, but I think that it's just important to, how do you work together? How do you figure that stuff out?
Is that even a rule, a word anymore, traditional? Really, when
you think
about it, it's not. It doesn't, we've kind of like moved past that a long time ago. You can have traditions, but there's nothing really traditional anymore.
But some people might have very specific, this is, ideas of what it means to be a mom, what it means to be a dad or a husband or a wife or whatever the makeup of the family is, right? And so, but how do you work together to figure out getting the things that need to get done, and how do you support each other, which is really hard. And I think, going to what you were saying about, moms who aren't ready or dads, maybe they should, whatever the thing is, like, it's so hard, and so many families are kind of on their own doing this work. They don't have the support system, or the folks around them aren't really ready to help, aren't available to help. And so how do we figure out how to help those families who need more to develop those skills? And there's stuff out there for moms. My avenue is to really support the dads so they can be there to support their partner and their kids, and also have a space for themselves to feel supported. I think that's super important, and to learn and to also offer. I mean, it's not just about like it's not come and take and learn. It's really about, what do I also have to offer? I have strengths that I can bring to the table that I can offer to other guys about things that I'm good at, whatever it might be. And that's where it's a really nice reciprocal relationship. Every guys are, giving and taking the whole way, and that's community, right? So.
Yeah, and it strengthens your relationship, no matter what that looks like. If you can work together to make the home stuff work, it changes all kinds of other things.
Well, it affects kids and the next kids and their kids. You know what I mean? It's like, it really, I mean, the impact is pretty important in terms of the family in the now, and then as they grow and as they have their own children and their own families.
And we have a couple more things here. We have Michael Booten says, dads are so desperately needed and frankly underrated. Our community would be in a better place if we had more strong fathers. Thank you. And then Michael Deering says, we do, and it's tough to ask for help, but we need to. And building relationships with other fathers is so vital, and most are isolated as dads. This is huge. Thank you. And then he also says, especially in a community that's such a huge rate of poverty, it's hard without being part of networks, and we are lacking so many networks like this.
Yeah.
So, I think, and Michael's a dad, Michael Deering's a dad. I think that I know you'll see him. He's got it.
We'll connect. We're working our way there.
Yeah, he's. I know that will definitely happen. Great family there, and he's got a lot on his plate too. So it'll be just that connection. I think is going to bring. It brings it's full circle. It brings a lot of peace in a lot of areas to be able to have this.
Well, I think there's, I'm here to do the work as well, but I think it's also, what I'll put out there is to, the men out there of, being good role models, out there helping out guys when guys are struggling around being a dad, and supporting them and encouraging them. And, some of the, whether you're an older, I don't want to say older dad, more seasoned, experienced dad, and in different places too. It's not just, somebody who's struggling around, some basic things, but also like, in the workplace, like just, checking in with each other. Like, how's it going? How's, being a dad? How's it, you just had a baby, like, how's it going? And, it's a little corny, but holding space for that. Like, oh yeah, wow, great. Absolutely. I remember when my kid was a baby, that was such a crazy, wild time. But you'll get through it, and let me know if I can help out in any way. Like, whatever the thing is, like, I think it's really important that men step up for other men and encourage them, and be there for them, and also, like, maybe there's, whatever, guys like to give advice. So, hey, whatever, let's get together, get the kids together, have a barbecue, and just, I think that, again, it's community, seeing other guys parent, doing that, guys who are, have kind of went through that early time is so much work. But really be encouraging, checking in with each other. It doesn't have to happen at 124 Main Street, it can happen wherever. And just, I think that guys need to be there for each other, but also, like, I also think guys need to want to raise the bar on fatherhood. It's the bar's kind of low sometimes about where we step up, and I remember my first son, I used to go around town, and people say, "You're such a great dad," and I just would play with my kid, but I wasn't really, I had a lot to learn about parenting, and the mom did. Probably 90% of the stuff, but I'd bop around town and get all the credit of being a great dad.
Because you were seen out there.
Because I was seen, and I think because the bar is low for men, and in that way of being involved, and there are a lot of great guys out there super involved, but I think how do we also raise the expectations in the bar for men to be more involved? And I will tell you, who will benefit so greatly is those dads will benefit so much by being involved in their kids' lives.
Oh,
it is not just the kids. To being a dad has been such a healing thing for me, and being, engaged with my kids, giving my kids the things that I didn't have. I joke around with my kids. I was like, how many times did, my dad read a story? And they're like, none. And I'm like, yep, and just letting them know it's really important to be able to read stories and connect with them and go play football with them and do all the things. because it's kind of filling that void that I didn't have as a
Yeah.
you know, as a child. So
Well, and all of that stuff is stuff that matters and
yeah,
sticks with them. It creates the memories that are
yeah,
deep. You can have memories of, oh, we went to Disneyland or something like
yeah,
that, but the memory of, getting ready to settle down at night and reading that story with your dad, and maybe both of you having a favorite book or a favorite story or a
yeah,
short movie. That's something that stays deep. That's a deep memory that you'll always have, and you'll always
yeah,
be able to treasure.
yeah.
And they mean a lot. They really do.
They
And
do.
they're a big deal. And kind of changing tracks a little, because I've thought about this, and I know a couple of people that have had a hard time navigating and maneuvering the work world and their kids, and being able to say, okay, my partner does work, and my partner also works full time, but my partner only has this many days a year that are available to them to take off, and they've already used up 4 of their sick days and 2 of their vacation days. And how am I going to step up at work and say to my boss, my kid's sick today, I can't come in, or you know, my partner had surgery and I'm going to need a few days to stay home and take care of the household. And being able to just say that out loud and say that to your employer and say, this is what I need,
Yeah.
and be okay about it, instead of, I think that creates so much panic and stress, and
Yeah.
can sometimes cause some rift in the family life,
Oh,
because
for sure. Yeah.
again, you're asking one partner to take that all on themselves. And but I think it's sometimes, again, it's traditionally that didn't happen, that the mom would have been the one to stay home, to take care of this, to take care of that. And we know that dads now can get time off when their partner has a baby, or if they have a child of whatever. You are allotted that time as well, but not a lot of men know that or even take that time.
Yeah, yeah. It's different for so many folks, in terms of, I've worked in sort of worked with families for a while, so that's been a value of being able to take time off. My kid's sick, it's been easier to do. Some jobs, it's hard to take that time off. You lose the money, and so that's hard. So that becomes a stressor. But I think it is to those that might have that opportunity to be able to take that time off and be able to say, like, hey boss, I just, my kid's been homesick the last 2 days. My partner's taken that, and I need to take the next day. Like, I'm just letting you know I got to do that. And however they can, make up the time, or if they have paid time off, whatever it is. But I think it's important for guys to give themselves the permission to be able to, one is like, hey, it's on me too. Like,
Right, I
I'm
can
dad.
do
I'm here for
this.
my kid. Like,
Right.
that's being the provider, protector in another sense. But then also, like, being able to go to your, employer, your boss, and say, and it's not always easy. You might know your boss is depending on you, and there's a lot of pressure and stress there, and that pressure and stress comes back to home, and it is difficult. And so, but it does boil down to, how do parents co-parent, work together to meet the needs of their kids? How do they communicate with each other? And it is hard. I'm not saying it because, like, I got this figured out. It is not. It's a stress in my house. Who's doing what? Who's covering this? Who's covering that? It is not easy. But I think that for guys to be able to do that, and for employers to say, how do I, know that I have to make sure, if I want to keep this guy on, if I want to keep,
I'm gonna have to,
keep
I'm
good
gonna have to
employees,
work with
I've got to
him
be
too.
flexible too. And maybe, maybe he works a couple hours late the next day, but whatever the thing is, but that they are valuing that, and valuing, again, that's that piece about out in the world of men valuing other men's role as fathers, and that's important, and that really, in the long run, that's, that pays off for everybody. So,
Right.
yeah.
And so, in a huge way, just from what you just said, in a nutshell, is you need this group as much as you want to provide the group.
Yeah.
Is a way for you to keep growing and learning as well, because it never stops. I mean, my kids are 32 and 34, and I feel like shit. I got all kinds of stuff that I still need to know and learn and understand. And one is really secure in life and going strong and doing really well, and My other is an addict, and there's been roller coasters and problems and things to solve and things to work on. And knowing, I spent a lot of years in silence and hiding all of that and feeling super lonely. And it can be very lonely sometimes. As a parent, you can feel very lonely, and this just means that you don't have to be. And so, you giving this outlet to men, I think, is and to dads, it's just, it's huge. And I think that it's just important that people recognize that this makes you more of a man. I really, I cannot say that enough.
Well, I think you were saying about, you were kind of isolated doing this thing, and I think that sometimes, oftentimes, as parents, we don't know what we need until we get it. Like, right? This guy's out there, I don't need to talk to Josh. I don't need to go, I don't know dad's group.
Until you say
what
something
what
out
the heck?
loud. Yeah.
And then, but what if you came? What if you came through the doors and said, I just want to get a cup of coffee. I'm way to work, free cup of coffee. That sounds great. But we talked about it. We got a chance to talk about being a dad and what kind of dad are you? What kind of dad do you want to be? Maybe you're the perfect role model. Maybe you got it. But you come and suddenly, wow, like that was really helpful to talk about what was going on. I don't need any big secrets from anybody. I just like, this is what's going on. This is hard.
Maybe I really have something to share.
I have something to share. I have something I am wondering about. My kiddo, whatever's going on with our kids. The kids got a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot going on in families. But if I had a space to come talk about that and to walk away, I'm like, oh, I feel a little lighter. It's free. Just want to say, you don't have to come in and pay anything. And you can walk away feeling a little lighter and, connected, and who knows what happens the next day. But I think it's, something worth trying. And again, we don't know. We got to, we try something out. And I think a lot of guys that I knew didn't know that a dad's group was important to them. And once they start coming, I got to go to Tuesday night. Got to go. It's part of my thing now. It's important to me. It's important to my kid. It's important to my partner, to be able to go do that and work on myself as a man and a dad and be better, because I know I can be. I just need a little bit of, connection, so.
Yeah. We have some more stuff coming in. So let's see. Josh is awesome. I met with him on Tuesday and have followed his recommendations with my son since. And it has made a huge, healthy change in our home. I can't wait for this Tuesday's group meeting and excited to meet one-on-one for coffee in the coming week.
Awesome.
So, and that came from Bradley Burnett.
Nice.
So,
awesome.
See, you're already on there, making a difference. So, and I know that you're going to. I fully support this, and I hope that if there's anything that I can do to shout out what you're doing, make sure that I know. I'll make sure to promote your times, your groups, what you're doing. I really think it's a big deal, and I think that it's overdue and needed, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
So,
I'm excited to share what's going on, and I feel like the Barrie community has been really receptive to what I'm trying to do, and get those dads in the door.
So you are at 124 North Main Street, correct?
Yep, that's right.
And that is Suite 3.
Yep.
And that is right above Wabi Jeweler, correct?
Right. Yep.
The stairway's kind of like right between there, and is it Amy's? That's right there.
Yes, correct.
So you can get upstairs right there. Is there a back entrance there?
There isn't.
Remember.
There isn't a back entrance that I know of, but there's two big signs. You can't miss it anymore.
So awesome. So there is signage, and then how does somebody contact you?
Well, you can email me, josh@vermontfatherhood.org. It's one way. You can also call me or text me, 802-380-4752. 802-380-4752. Or just stop by. Catch me.
Perfect. That's awesome. and let's stay in touch and say right now to everybody, you're invited. And 124 North Main Street, it's right above Wabi Jeweler. Just take a chance. I mean, take a minute and check it out. It doesn't hurt to check it out. And maybe you'll go and you'll find that it's not for you, but maybe you'll go and you'll take this big sigh and say, oh my gosh, this is, instead of going to the gym at least one of the nights a week, if you're somebody who goes to the gym every night, on Tuesday nights, I'm not going to go, I'm going to do this instead. Because you'll gain just as much strength from this. And
I'm having a sort of a casual open house next Friday, some different times, kind of a 9 to 10:30, just going to have a little snack and just come. I'll do a little presentation and get to know people. You can check out the space. So it's first time is at 9 o'clock. Next time is at 11:30. And the next time I think I put as 4:30. And then I'll also do Saturday at 9 o'clock, and all kind of right before Father's Day. So come on by, check it out, and hope to meet you.
And then Saturday is at 9, you said?
Yeah, 9 to 10:30.
And that's next Saturday. So just want to make sure that I get this right. So the 13th and 14th.
Yep.
Perfect. And of course, I will put this all in a post. You probably have it posted. I'll share any of the information that you have just to make sure that we get the word out and everybody knows how to get in touch and how to come to that open house. And I'm going to have to send Michael Booten down there with a camera at some point and check out the space. And, and maybe sometime you could join us again with a couple of dads
That'd be fun.
that are willing to kind of come forward and say, yeah, I'm a part of this, and it really, has made a difference, or this is what I really needed to do. It would be nice to start hearing from dads a little more, and that will in turn encourage others to say, okay, I can do this too.
Yeah, I'm excited to do that. Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we can get some dry weather. It sounds a little iffy. So far, so good. Josh said it was sprinkling when he came in, but I don't hear any downpours or anything as of yet. So that's a good thing. And we will see you all next week. Shortly, there is the Vermont podcast at 2:30. Tune in for that. And otherwise, we will see you on Tuesday at noon for a table talk. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take care and stay safe.